A texture has a certain element that we would like to change, but don't know how to locate that element for us to change it. In this tutorial, we will work on our texture detective skills. Begin by opening the gouged basket weave preset. In order to keep an eye on our texture as we edit it, we can make sure that the root node of the texture is selected, and then press the Create Float in View button. This will create an independent window with a large preview of our texture. As we edit the texture, the float in view will automatically update. We can drag the float in view out of the way, or if you have a dual monitor setup, you can drag it to your second screen. At the moment, we're interested in the faint gouges that appear on the wood. We would like to make them darker, but how do we discover where they are created? We can see the gouges in the root node, so our first instinct may be to try to edit this node in order to modify the gouges. But remember that in Genetica, information flows downwards. That means that the upper nodes in the texture represent the earlier steps in its creation, while the lower nodes represent the final result. In order to find which step creates the gouges, we must work backwards from the root. We can see that this node has gouges, and we can see that this node has gouges. But there are no gouges in this node. That tells us that this is the node where the gouges are created. This is a group node, so we must enter it by clicking Edit in order to continue our exploration. And here we are inside of the group, where we begin the process again. This node has gouges, and of its two inputs, only this node has gouges, while its input doesn't have any. That tells us that this is the node where the gouges are created. But recall that our goal was to make the gouges darker, and these gouges are plenty dark. So our question becomes, where in the texture do the dark gouges turn into light ones? Repeating the process, we can see that this node has light gouges, and this node has dark gouges. That tells us that this is the node where the gouges are made lighter. This is a simple combine node, so we'll take a look at the properties at the bottom of the interface. A combine node's opacity slider controls how it mixes its two inputs. Let's increase opacity to make the gouges darker. Dragging in the float in view that we created earlier, we can see that now we have nice, dark gouges. Success. Let's return to the Start tab and try another example. This time, open the Colorful Boards preset. This time, our goal will be to get rid of the texture's reddish tint. Remembering that in Genetica information flows downwards, we know that the highest visible node that displays a certain quality is the node that is responsible for that quality. In this case, the wood lab is the highest node displaying the reddish tint, so it must be responsible for it. To find out why, click its lab button. The properties of a lab node are organized into a number of sections. Once again, information flows downwards, which means that we can click one section after the other, and as soon as we see the element we are interested in, we'll be able to modify it. Not that one. Not that one. There we go. There's that reddish tint we were looking for. And here's the reddish color that must be responsible for it. We'll modify it, and then render. Success! For this next example, let's take a look at animation. To follow along, you will need the Studio edition of Genetica. Find and open the Glowing Graph preset. Our goal will be to search for the source of the animation and to remove it. As before, the highest node in the tree that is exhibiting the quality that we are looking for is the node that is responsible for it. Moving up, this node is responsible for the animation. Let's click Edit to enter it. Moving up again, We now see that there are actually two nodes that are responsible for the animation. We'll have to deal with these one at a time. I'm going to enter the first group. Now it appears that this node is responsible for the animation. I'm going to enter it. And finally, here we are. All that animation was coming from this one frequency node. The Properties panel at the bottom of the interface will tell us what is animated in that node, specifically the phase property is being animated, and we can tell by the green and yellow clock icon that is next to it. I'm going to click that icon and then click Remove Animation. We have successfully removed this source of the animation, but recall that we had previously discovered that the animation was actually coming from two locations. To search for it, we could move out of the groups one at a time by repeatedly clicking the previous level button, but a quicker way is to use the Nested Groups panel. This panel lists all the groups that we are in one at a time. We are within this group, which itself is within this group, all the way down to the final texture itself. We can click on any of these groups to jump directly to it, but how do we know which one we want to click on? Recall that in Genetica, information flows downwards. That means that in any list, the highest item to display the quality that we are looking for is the item that is responsible for that quality. In this case, we are looking for animation, and this group is the highest one that seems to be moving. That's the one we need to click on. We've jumped out several groups. Scrolling up, we've returned to that location where we discovered that it was actually two nodes that were responsible for the animation. We can now enter the second one and repeat the previous steps. Using the Nested Groups panel again, we can click the very last entry to simultaneously move out of all of the groups. As you can see, all animation has been successfully removed.